Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I love Doritos, Cheetos, and Fritos. I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and after all this listening, I'm pretty hungry.
Food. We have returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek shows, and this week we're once again taking a detour into the world of music and talking about an artist that drew inspiration from the world of Star Trek and sci-fi. Today we're talking about MF Doom. It's Doomsday.
Doomsday, yeah. Another holiday-themed episode.
Absolutely. Last time we looked at a musical act, we talked about the Beastie Boys all the way back in our second episode, and it's way past time that we cover the world of music again. Music, the other audio entertainment. There's talking and there's music, and the only rap can merge talking and music. And maybe like Barry White when he takes a break and like talks over the bridge.
The original podcast.
Right. Yes. Barry White, the original podcaster. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm great. How are you?
That's good. I know that you've been trying to get some things squared away in your life, and
it's all going great.
I have been doing that as well. I'm okay. I'm getting sick of reading, or at least now looking at, rolling my eyes and clicking past the cavalcade of articles ranking the best Marvel movies, you know, top to bottom. Oh, this is the best Marvel movie. Mm-hmm. This is the best Marvel hero. This is the best Marvel villain, so on and so forth. And
we're just out of like anything interesting to talk about.
Yeah, so. There's absolutely nothing going on in the world at all. So so that's what we're doing as Marvel movies get worse and worse. I don't know if you saw the Thor movie.
No, what is this? Is this preemptive? It's not good.
Oh well, I'm not trying to do that, but I did. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it as part of what I see as a real downward trend in films in general. I just feel like films are not great, and they don't look like they're going to get any better anytime soon.
So that's been my thing recently. I've mentioned a lot is like nowadays, like I'm just like, it doesn't look good. I think there's so many good things I haven't seen, so I'll just watch that instead, you know.
Yeah.
Trying not to get it. So, like, I don't know. Thor looks, I don't know. It looks like it might be fun, but I was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, you know what I went and saw instead? Opening weekend of Thor? I went and saw Elvis.
Oh, what'd you think of that?
It was insane. I had a great time.
Yeah? Okay.
Because, you know, it's just like it's the pacing and like intensity of this Baz Luhrmann thing, and then you've got Tom Hanks doing a character that feels like a Paul F. Tompkins Comedy Bang Bang character.
Oh my god.
And so I kind of loved it. I loved it. I don't even know much about Elvis. I'm not really a fan of Elvis, but I was a fan of this movie.
Okay. I've thought about it. I am a fan of Elvis, which makes me worried, you know, whether I'll enjoy it or not. And as far as Baz Luhrmann goes, I'm way over the mountain as far as Baz Luhrmann goes. But I think that, like, I think Picard season 2 was when I finally started to see Five Lights. Do you know what I mean? Like, at that, Picard season 2 convinced me nothing really matters. Just enjoy this as the blood leaks from your body and you slip off into the afterlife.
You're gonna like this. Like when I think about when I don't like the latest season of Picard or whatever, and I come on and we complain about it, like in my day-to-day life, it's like, that's no sweat off my back because there's still so much I haven't seen that sounds good that I want to check out. Oh, like, yeah. I've never seen Farscape. I've never seen, you know, all of Battlestar Galactica or all these other, you know, so I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe they're not making these good shows now, but there's so many like seemingly awesome shows that I want to check out. So whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty. That's true. There's plenty to see. It's just that like Thor, for instance, I thought it was just kind of lazy. And like when people who enjoy it, I think that they are invested. They're too invested in it. You know, like as somebody who has been a critic in the past and remains extremely critical in his life, like I have the detachment where I go, no, look, I love Thor. Like I really want to like this, but I don't think it's very good. And people's response to that is always, what does it matter? It's just a movie. Turn your brain off. And I mean, like, I am fundamentally opposed to that idea. But with, Picard season 2, I was able, I think, to just turn my brain off and enjoy it. And I could possibly enjoy this, Baz Luhrmann movie about Elvis, where the guy doesn't look anything like Elvis, and Tom Hanks, playing, like you said, like an SNL character or something like that. Maybe I could just enjoy that. I don't know if that's me being more accepting or if that's me giving up, but I don't know. I'll let you know. I'll let you know where I end up.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Just watching Desperate Housewives reruns. It's all good. Everything's good.
Yeah, all media is good. That's my new opinion.
I've always called that the Fat Springfield theory, and it comes from a Simpsons episode, and I have no idea what season it is. I don't know if it's a good season or not, but Homer becomes a food critic, and because Homer is, a bottomless pit you throw food into, he's the worst food critic possible, and so he gives everything like 7 thumbs up, and then there's a scene where he goes outside, and he looks around, and everybody in Springfield, Lenny, Carl, Mr. Burns, they've all gained 50 pounds. Because they're all influenced by his, everybody now understands that everything is so good because they've read this critics. It's like this kind of criticism of critiquing. And so like whenever I read something like blah.com is just, filleting themselves over how good the next piece of corporate cinema is, I'm like, it's just like Fat Springfield.
Well, that's why then it's funny then that it's like, it does get such high praise and all this stuff, but then there's people who are like, oh, like, why, if you're critical about it, just like, like, it's not meant to be good, like, just enjoy it. And it's like, well,
yeah, right.
There are plenty of people who are like treating it like it's supposed to be really good. So
yeah,
I don't know, maybe you're not one of those people, but
it doesn't really matter. What they forgot in that Simpsons episode was in the episode, all the Homer, it's another comment on criticism, but Homer is told that his reviews are too good. So he begins to embrace being really like catty and bitchy and giving everything a bad review.
That's also a thing too.
Yeah. And so all the restaurateurs in town team up and hire an assassin to kill him because they're ruining his business. The scene they forgot, though, is where Homer decides to be more even-handed, and then the public tries to kill him because he, says that this thing that they're really invested in isn't good. That's like the scene that they
right. That's the more current thing on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course that applies to Star Trek, but we won't deal with that on this particular episode. I wanted to mention real quick, we were talking about podcasting before. There is a brand new video podcast. It's an official Star Trek podcast, and it is called To Boldly Ask.
I literally just saw this at lunch today. Okay.
It will be hosted by Ian Spelling, who, of course, is well known to Star Trek fans. This article tells me. Anyway, I had to look up who
yeah.
I had to look up who he is, but I guess he was. It says the editor. I don't know if he was the editor or an editor. Usually, if you are the editor, you are like an executive editor or something. But he was an editor for StarTrek.com, and it says that he was a contributing writer for nearly 30 years to the New York Times. It's like, okay, again, if you work for the New York Times, assuming that you're not just like, writing like the police blotter or something, you would have a specific position. But apparently he is a very, very famous journalist. And his first guest will be Jonathan Frakes.
Okay, so this is a podcast because I saw just
it's a video podcast, which sounds like a video series to me. But again, what do I know?
I didn't click on the sound thing. I was eating lunch with a coworker, and I just saw Jonathan Frakes like talking on Zoom, and I was like, this must be like a Star Trek themed cameo service or something,
Yeah,
but it turns out it's a podcast.
It sounds like the Paul F. Thompson podcast meets the Will Wheaton show. They'll be doing these over Zoom. I'm sure probably mostly be actors, probably writers and producers from current series, and they're going to ask off the wall, outside of the box questions.
Oh, you're gonna get the dirt for sure. Like, oh, for sure. No, I don't know what to expect from it, but it's probably going to be pretty.
Yeah. Which hand do you jerk off with? Like that's like if they. That's how I would blow the interview when they told me to ask off the wall questions.
Oh shoot! Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they just want to be like, what's the wackiest prank that was on set?
Yeah, right. Yeah. All the dirt, all the sifted and sanitized dirt that everybody wants to hear.
Speaking of, yeah.
So anyway, this is with the companion.app. I have no idea what that is. And it possibly...
So many like apps people are always trying to get you to download to listen to a podcast. And I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
It was reported by Heavy.com, and this guy was a writer for Heavy.com. So I'm assuming that it is connected to Heavy.com. Another thing I don't really know anything about, but there you go.
All right, sure. Heavy.
Heavy stuff, heavy questions, and yeah, check those out. I guess I wanted to mention really fast an RIP from, from last week, I guess. The character actor Gregory Itzin has passed away at the age of 76. And this is one of those guys who his name doesn't mean anything to you, but if you saw a picture of him, or excuse me, he's 74. If you saw a picture of him, you'd immediately know who he is. As a person who is watching through Voyager, I can point out that he played a character in the critical care episode of Voyager, which is kind of like their take on HMOs.
Yeah, I just watched that.
Yeah, the doctor gets kidnapped, downloaded to like a hospital planet, and there's like different levels, and the doctor wants to cure everybody. And he's like, hey, I want to give this guy the juice. But this, Gregory Itzin comes in and is like, no, you have to be a premium citizen to get that kind of treatment, and so there's a conflict there.
Yes,
and
okay.
He appeared like 7 times on Star Trek throughout different series, starting with DS9. And he was in a lot of other things. He's probably best known as playing the role of President Logan on 24, one of the many president sort of characters that kind of went in and out of the doors. But he also stuck around as like a side character. It's like a real good villain. He played a lot of villains in his time.
Yeah, not many people have played that many characters on Star Trek. So he's in kind of a illustrious group.
Yeah, and like over 850 episodes, of a production with Paramount, they definitely did have people come on more than once. When you're playing an alien, you just stick something on their face or give them ears, and it's a different guy, right? And so they could have anybody back that they wanted to, but the fact that they had somebody like him back so many times just speaks to how good he is, how easy he was to work with, and personable, I'm sure. That we got a role for a bad guy here. Call Greg and see if he can get in here. So
some guys just feel like Star Trek too.
I'll
find myself watching a lot. Actually, I was watching some Enterprise last night, and there was a guy who was on who was really good, and I think it was the only episode he was on, and I looked up who he was, and I'm like, oh well, I felt like I've seen him before, because that's usually the case. Is I'll be like, I feel like I've seen him, and I'm like, yeah, this guy just feels like Star Trek. Yeah, and I definitely did that. I think during Critical Care about the same actor, because it's like, oh, I've definitely he's come up.
Yeah, and also I've heard that it's movies and TV not the same thing necessarily acting wise. A lot of movie actors try to do TV and it doesn't really work out for them. And a lot of TV actors can't make the jump to movies. And he's got a movie or two, but he really was a TV guy. And I think that part of that is, obviously you have to be able to work very quickly, know your lines quickly and get it done in a week. But just the way that he could sort of hold the viewer's attention and sort of deliver his lines, with import, no matter how ridiculous it is, whether it's yelling at Jack Bauer for something or yelling at a hologram for something. Like, he was just believable. One of the first DS9 episodes he was in was the episode Dax, where he plays the guy who's trying to track down Dax because Dax's former host might have killed somebody. And so he shows up from this planet and they end up putting Dax on trial. And he has to be like, to be honest, like, he's got a point because if we don't know, I mean, innocent until proven guilty, like, we don't know if like Dax's former host did like kill this guy. And so this guy's kind of in the right, like, maybe this person should be put on trial, but you have to hate him anyway because it's Dax, right? And he wants to put Dax away. Mm-hmm. And so
totally.
In the end, it turns out that, maybe he's not so bad, but for the entire episode, you're like, what a prick. This guy's like the worst. And he won't listen to any arguments and he won't leave it alone. And he was really good for episodes like that.
That's the Bruce Maddox maneuver. Where you can like by one line at the end be like, oh, maybe he's not such a bad guy.
Okay, Data's gonna like write a diary to him. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's cute.
Maybe he'll turn out all right. Yeah. So R.I.P. to him.
Yeah.
Somebody was just saying, "Oh, God must be putting on a great play in heaven right now."
Yeah. Him and old Jimmy Kahn.
Old Jimmy Kahn
tearing it
and Polly Walnuts, and
Oh my
we're gonna,
God.
yeah, it's gonna be great. It's so stupid.
I love all these people dying.
But anyway, that's what's
No.
happening on the Trek side. But let's get back to the music side, and
Yes,
let's
yeah.
talk about our featured subject for today. He's known by many names: MF Doom, King Ghidorah, Metal Fingers, Metal Face, Victor Vaughn, Zev Love X, or simply Doom in all caps. Naturally, he was born Daniel Dumoulin in London, England. He grew up in Long Island, New York. Because he was born in England, he technically never gained American citizenship. He grew up loving comic books and music and began DJing as a young boy, and his friends and family called him Doom. In 1988, Doom and his younger brother DJ Subrock formed the trio KMD, along with Onyx the Birthstone Kid, and the trio was signed to Elektra Records. Their first album, Mr. Hood, came out in 1991, with the production primarily done by Doom and KMD. Before the release of their second album, Black Bastards, DJ Subrock was struck and killed by a car, and KMD was dropped by their label and their album went unreleased. Doom effectively quit the rap game at that point, living partially homeless in Manhattan and later in Atlanta, until 1997, when he began to appear at hip-hop open mics wearing a mask based on the Marvel Comics villain Dr. Doom. In 1999, he released his debut solo album, Operation Doomsday, on the indie label Fondulum Records. Doom produced the album himself, and it featured guest appearances by members of the Monster Island Czars, a hip-hop collective formed by Doom's friend and fellow rapper and producer MF Grimm. Members of the collective chose names from monster movies as their aliases, and Doom's was King Ghidorah. He released his second solo album, Take Me to Your Leader, in 2003 under the King Ghidorah name, and it featured guest spots by MF Grimm and other members of the collective. Later that year, Doom released his third solo album, Vaudeville Villain, under the name Victor Vaughn, a persona described by British magazine NME as a time-traveling street hustler. The album got rave reviews and charted on the Billboard Top 200. Arguably, Doom's big breakthrough came in 2004 with the release of Mad Villainy, his co-production with producer Madlib. Mad Villainy would go on to receive rave reviews and also chart both in the US and internationally. It sounds like I'm giving it short shrift, but we'll definitely be talking about it later. Later in 2004, Doom would release the follow-up to Vaudeville Villain, VV2, or Venomous Villain, as it's sometimes known. He would also release that as Victor Vaughn. VV2 had a darker sound than both Vaudeville and Mad Villainy, but it represented the fact that despite Doom's mainstream success in that year, he was still committed to making the music that he wanted to make. And speaking of mainstream success, Doom released a third album in 2004, the critically acclaimed Food, which he released as MF Doom. Food is a concept album of sorts where every track uses something food-related as a jumping-off point. That album also charted both in the US and abroad. Doom continued to court mainstream fame with his 2005 collaboration with DJ Danger Mouse and Cartoon Network's Adult Swim, an album called The Mouse and the Mask. The album featured an entire hour of hip-hop and instrumentals by Doom and Danger Mouse, credited as Danger Doom, intercut with skits by Adult Swim show characters. Also that year, Doom would guest on a track for the Gorillaz album, Demon Days. The next year, Doom would produce 2 albums for Ghostface Killah and would work with him on an unreleased collaborative album. In 2009, Doom would release his final solo album, Born Like This, as simply Doom. The album would reach number 9 on the Billboard Rap chart and 52 on the Top 200, and was seen as a return to form for his solo work. Doom would tour internationally to support the album, but upon trying to return to the US, he was denied entry into the country. Though he grew up in New York, he had never had an American citizenship. He was a British citizen, though, so he moved to London and continued working and collaborating with other artists, releasing the album Key to the Cuffs in 2012 in collaboration with producer Gennaro Jarrell. Cuffs included guest features from artists like Damon Albarn, Beth Gibbons of Portishead, Kuhujo Goody of Goody Mob, and in 2014 he released Neruvian Doom, his collaboration with rapper Bishop Nehru, with vocals mostly by Nehru and production by Doom, using many of the beats that he developed in his ongoing Special Herbs instrumental series. In 2017, Doom announced on Instagram that his 14-year-old son Ezekiel had passed away. and no other details were given. Doom's last album, Czarface Meets Metalface, would release in 2018. It was a collaboration between Doom and the rap supergroup Czarface, which included Inspector Deck, DJ 7L, and Esoteric. A second collaboration between the two, Super What, would release in 2021. The reason Czarface was Doom's last album is that he passed away on October 31st, 2020, at the age of 49. No one would even know about that until December 31st of that year, when his wife announced on Instagram that he had died. So not only was that kind of a roller coaster summation of his career, but he lived kind of a roller coaster life. And
Right,
I was, as somebody who had just been getting into him in recent years, I was shocked to find out when we did the last day of 2020, insert your 2020 meme here, that Doom had passed away on Halloween, no less. So sad that he passed away, but I think that would definitely be of his idiom to commemorate Halloween with something horrible and tragic.
Well, it was already like a strange time, because that was like the first year of the pandemic too, right? And so like a lot of people were like doing things differently, or like not hearing stuff from, artists weren't performing live, and then he already had the thing where he wasn't allowed to come back here. But then on top of that, like, he's a very like mysterious kind of guy, so like it was just like I guess it was both like extremely strange, and then like kind of like that's kind of fitting that like you didn't even hear about it for months, and then it was on Halloween. It was a weird time, for sure. Still is a weird time, I guess.
It still is. I mean, we're just not, we're getting used to, I think, not having any information about like how people die. Not that like, we're owed that information. I mean, obviously we just is somebody that we, admire and care about, but, and I wonder if nobody knows if it's COVID related. At this point, it just seems stupid to even, to speculate, but I feel like a lot of celebrity deaths now are just undisclosed and they don't say anything. And whether or not, I think that started because of COVID. I think a lot of people died in 2020 from COVID, and whether or not they were, anti-vaxxers or Eric Clapton-esque anti-mask people, you didn't want to get owned for dying from that, or you didn't want to be seen as somebody who, even if you were completely innocent and just caught COVID or something like that, it became, no cause. And I think that's continued to today.
Like you said, like maybe that's not such a bad precedent, because like, I don't know, it's fine if they don't want to talk about how their loved ones died, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
we're not owed that. Yeah.
But it's still tragic, especially for a guy who, in a lot of ways, I think like prefigured where rap was going. Like, he was ahead of the curve, I think, in a lot of ways. When he first started and he was with his group KMD, and I listened to mostly his solo albums and the big like collaborations for this. But if you wanted to listen to Doom stuff, there are B-sides and bootlegs and instrumentals and guest spots, and there, if you want to get into Doom, like, he's got so much material, but he could have had so much material, which is, what is really depressing about it. But even in the KMD days, like, they're out there doing it. They sound kind of like a Tribe Called Quest. They're on Elektra Records. And so they definitely were sort of that time, like, sounded good, but like everything else. And then, of course, this tragedy hits and he loses his brother and he kind of disappears for a while. And he comes back. And a lot of people speculate, and he's talked about this too. He's somebody who, never turned down an interview. That like he just sort of felt he had a chip on his shoulder. Like, he felt like he wanted revenge on the industry, like this was all born out of his frustration, his sorrow and the tragedy, but also the frustration of sort of being booted out of the industry when he was just starting. And so he came back kind of doing it his own way. And in that way, he was producing sounds that I think would, not, maybe thanks to him, maybe not, start to infect the rest of what rap would sound like in the 2000s and even like going forward today. And like his thing about just rapping about like whatever he wanted to, be it like pop culture references or like food or whatever it was, not necessarily bucking the trend of like gangster rap, which was going on then and would continue into the 2000s as well. You know, a lot of people say, you'll hear often about him that he's like your favorite rapper's rapper.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, what that means is that like, you know, rappers, I don't know if it's like his do-it-yourself legitimacy that they crave, or if it's like the way that he turns a phrase and his like off syncopation, you know, creative rhyme style. But like from people from like Talib Kweli, who's somebody who is also like your favorite rapper's rapper, you know, has endless praise for him and like loved the several times that he worked with him, to like Drake, like to like a couple of years back, Drake was like, yeah, I love that MF Doom. And people immediately came on under like, you like MF Doom? Come on. It's not illegal for Drake to like MF Doom, but it certainly doesn't influence his work at all.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily show, unless if he thinks he is. I don't know.
Sure, there's enough room for everybody to serve Doom.
I do catchphrases or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he was amazing, and like I would have loved to have seen what he would have come up with, you know, in the future years. You know, in a world of, he also he did it himself. I mean, he did it on indie labels, but in a world of like SoundCloud rappers and people going platinum, just, you know, starting off on the internet, you know, him being a guy who had seen it all and done it all. I wonder if, first of all, if the Obama administration had not like, you know, turned him away from returning to the US, and his life hadn't been turned upside down, I wonder how he would have plugged into that. And I wonder if he would have become something even more in that space.
Yeah, you think
but,
so?
You know, we'll never know. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it didn't. I'm not defending it, obviously. That's awful. But like some of I didn't listen to as much of the later stuff, but I mean, some of the things I heard were like fantastic. So it seems like he's pretty resilient. You know what I mean? Like he's pretty good at like grappling with, I guess, the adversity that he would have to deal with. You know, like from the early days of him in music to that moment as well. You know? Yeah. Like kind of finding a way to, I don't know, because you said like all the different people he collaborated with and did different things with, you know, I guess that's a trait that's pretty admirable about him, even though like it's awful those things happen, they shouldn't have happened, you know?
Yeah. And something that I like about him, like when you see him in interviews or something, is that like he's just doing it. He wears the mask all the time. You know, he's got a mask that's nominally based on, you know, Marvel Comics Doctor Doom, but it's either like borrowing the design or maybe it's just a modified Gladiator mask, a Maximus mask, you know, from
exactly.
The 2000 film Gladiator. Yeah. So he's sort of blending those things together. And like, I don't know, if he'd never become a rapper, like he would definitely be doing something creative, but he's also just like, he's a nerd, you know, he's just like a big nerd who loves nerdy stuff, but also is, you know, like a cool, tough rapper guy. And I think that for a lot of I think rappers, like all entertainers, are insecure. and I think a lot of rappers want to be something, they want to be really cool, or be hard if they're like a gangster rapper. But being around Doom, it's like he has this effortlessness where he is who he is. And he doesn't have to pretend to be really cool and have a lot of ladies like Drake or be real tough, don't step to him. And so I can just see how rappers would admire him, but also maybe not want to do a show with him because they're like, is this going to like, our style's going to clash? Like, how's this going to work exactly?
Yeah.
If I work with him, is he going to want me to like rap about Cheetos or something like that? So,
well, that ends up being like, I don't know. Well, I guess a lot of the collaborations are usually more with like producers, but
yeah.
I feel like I also feel like he's good at like, even though he's like always very distinct, like he kind of fits usually in whatever he's like collaborating with, you know?
Yeah.
Or like if you have someone come, like, I feel like when like Ghostface Killa is on with him, like they fit perfectly, you know, but then he'll also like he can do something even, I mean, Ghostface Killa is pretty dorky too,
Oh
but
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean, he can go even dorkier than that and it's still cool, you know.
yeah,
Which I think is also what a lot of like there's like that whole drama, there's a whole genre of like those like nerdy rappers, and they're all
yeah,
horrible.
yeah, yeah. They all kind of suck.
But yeah, he's pretty effortlessly pulls it off. That's obviously like what drew me to him when I was young. And then, well, what ended up being fitting too is because I think my first like, well, I was really into the Beastie Boys, but I also really was into Wu-Tang Clan. Like a lot of like kids like my age really got into it for the, you know, the same kind of thing. And then it was so fitting that he did those collabs with Czarface or whatever, because him and Inspector Deck both had that same sort of nerdiness, but like making it kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, and even like just sticking to it and like pushing through it, like even if it's not cool or if it's too much.
Yeah,
like,
sometimes it doesn't work out for sure.
Knowing, well, I mean, like knowing that he does mostly, unless he's, you know, working with Danger Mouse or something like that, like he's doing all the production on his own albums.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he has like, he's got a million clips from like the old Fantastic Four 60s cartoon.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And he will, like, you know, on an instrumental or on an intro or an outro, like he'll do entire skits where it's not like actors, it's like, you know, clips from the show. And so he must have like watched the entire show or just like selected clips to cut together like a little
they
mini
usually
skit
work really well
or story. Yeah, about like just describing like what Doom's going to do next. And
he
so,
do
like,
it with not just, because you'd think like, okay, maybe he just really likes that show, but like he did it on like the King Ghidorah album. They had that.
Yeah, from the Godzilla movies.
Yeah, so like clearly he's like dipping into a lot of these different areas, and he's like very fond of them.
Yeah, and if he's getting like 2.5 stars, you know, out of 5 from Allmusic, or even if he's getting like a 9 instead of a 9.5 from Pitchfork, the complaint is probably maybe a little less of the samples, but like he's just gonna do it anyway because he's like, no, this is like what I want to do. Like I'm making a rap album, but it's also kind of like a movie in that, you know, there's a opening and there's a middle part and there's a finish, and this is how I want it to go.
Yeah, he's really committed to like the themes, like they're like the literal like sort of gimmicks, I guess, are, he does them very well, and he like can adapt them to like different, you know, like a different sort of sound, or like we were just talking about, like what we're actually talking about. Like, I don't know, he very cleverly works a lot of things in together.
Yeah. I was thinking about like his fan base and how, you know, I think like, I mean, he never really like topped any of the charts. And so like, if you're somebody who like, you know, wants to, when something gets too cool, like you'll never like it, you're pretty much safe liking Doom, because he'll never be as big as Drake for whatever reason. But also like his fans for that reason are like a special breed of fan. They're people that like him either for what he raps about, or for his, you know, his style, or for the great beats that he does, but also just the sort of enigma of Doom, like this figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the sort of the weirdness and the commitment to the bit that he's got. And he commits to it so hard that sometimes if you go to see an advertised MF Doom show, you might not actually be seeing MF Doom. Sometimes
I saw that. That's
sometimes
really
he will send other rappers out like as him. I hope that they're like real rappers and they're delivering like a good show. And of course he calls them his Doom bots, which is like, you know, perfect.
That's, yeah.
To the point where like he did this. He also proves that like he's not above, like he's not too snobby to work like, you know, with corporate stuff. Like his Danger Mouse thing was essentially like a corporate rap job. Like he was doing it all for Adult Swim, and Shake and Frylock are all over the thing, but he's completely happy to do that. And I'm sure make a lot of money doing it. But at like a live concert promoting, I think, that album, MF Doom was scheduled to appear, and he came out, and then halfway through the song, like they pulled his mask off, and it was Hannibal Buress. And he's
Wow.
like, well, that was fun. And like the crowd was like ate it up. Like the crowd loved it. So, you're the
Almost
you're the
makes
type
it
of
better, yeah.
yeah, you're the type of fan that was like, if you're an MF Doom fan and you go to a concert and it's not even MF Doom, you're like, oh man, it was so great. It turned out that it was like somebody else. And it's like, yeah, great. I'm glad you got to see that.
I think if anyone can get away with that, it's him. Like, kind of fits his whole mystique, and like you said, the Doombot element. It just fits him so well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember the first time that you like heard about him, or what kind of turned you on to him?
It was either, because it was the same year, but it was either that Adult Swim album,
okay,
or the Gorillaz album. Because
Yeah.
those are both, two of those are some of the first CDs I ever actually bought, like with my own money, because I was in like junior high at the time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, I was like really into like a lot of the shows on Adult Swim, and so I saw this, and I don't think I knew who he was at the time, but it just felt like, oh, this is like, I don't know if this is like a real guy or something. I'm not sure. And then it was the same thing with the Gorillaz feature, because like, I don't know, I was a little naive, I guess, as a kid. I was maybe, I didn't know fully what was going on, but I remember when Gorillaz came out, their first album, I was 11, and they had, these animated videos, and I saw them first on Toonami, also on Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
And they had like, the one song with the animated guy, and I was like, all right, I presume there's a real guy doing this, but I'm like, I don't know if this is like a real persona or whatever. So then like when he came on this, it fit in just as well, where I was like, I'm reading the thing and it says featuring MF Doom, and it's like, is that a real guy? Is that like a alter ego? And it turns out to be like a little bit of both, because
right, yeah,
he only released like 2 albums or 3 albums under that name specifically, so
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so it was that age. I was like the right time. I didn't go on to be like, this is like my favorite thing, but I like over the years, have always kind of listened to his albums from time to time. But funny enough, I think the one I will listen to back the most is the Adult Swim one, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. Okay.
But now this time I think I've added more favorites to my repertoire. It also helped too that I was a big Wu-Tang fan, so like the Ghostface stuff, and he ended up producing stuff for Ghostface, so he like blended in basically with like my favorite kind of like, well, hip-hop like adjacent thing of middle school, of like the Gorillaz, and then when I was in high school I got really into Wu-Tang Clan, and he felt like not like that closely connected to it, but like he fit in that sort of style as well too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that's my story.
Yeah, I think that I'm surprised that I didn't become a fan of his sooner, or like make the sort of connection or jump from Wu-Tang Clan, because everybody had like the double LP, and like it is very similar in a lot of ways. They're rapping about Voltron, he's rapping about Voltron or whatever it is. But I think that my probably first exposure to him was also that Gorillaz album, and just remembering how the Gorillaz, especially as they go on, like have a lot of collaborators. They did a thing with Snoop Dogg, the next album.
Right.
But yeah, just hearing him on that song and hearing his kind of flow, that's just like he's just gonna say all the words and they're gonna fit into the rhythm somehow, and they're all gonna fit into the bars. And
right, it almost feels like he's like on a different
his metronome does its own thing, but somehow it matches up to the rest of the band. Yeah,
it feels so good, like when you're listening to it though. So it's like definitely in time. Like I saw someone describe it, and I think I like poorly explained it as like out of time, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's like it's clearly done by someone who like really knows what they're doing. You know what I mean? Because if you listen to his first albums with his group, like, and they're just doing, it's more like your kind of standard thing, but it's like it's the more like traditional kind of like rap flows. Like you see, like he's very capable. And then when you listen to this, it throws you for a loop sometimes. 'Cause you're like, where did that come from? But it like feels so good every time, you know?
Yeah, like this is maybe gilding the lily a little bit, but I always think about somebody like Picasso as an artist who went to art school, and like if you look at his early work, it's great from a traditional perspective, like his use of light in his paintings and figure and form, like they're Rembrandt-esque. It's really amazing. And then at some point he was like, all right, I figured that out. Like, what's next? And like just kind of started to sort of deconstruct, the idea of painting and portraiture, until he got to, cubism, and you got two eyes on one side of your head, and he's kind of doing his own thing. And that's kind of like what I think about Doom, starting off in that sort of b-boy hip hop thing and like nailing it, and then like being like, yeah, but like what else, can I do? Like, can I do something completely different than that throws people for a loop?
Yeah, because some of those things, they do kind of push the limit, like, because sometimes it is like I'm just cramming a bunch of words in, and you're like, wow. And then other times it's not cramming stuff in, it's actually more sparse, but it's like super rhythmic and like kind of like not just on the downbeat type stuff, and you're like, oh, it's like that happens a lot in that. I think that's what I noticed when I first heard that Gorillaz song, where I was like, he was sort of like on the upbeat sometimes or something like that,
Yeah. And he does almost all of it, like it isn't a strict rule, but he does almost all of it like without a hook. Like he doesn't do a lot of choruses. He does them sometimes, but otherwise, like, and to be honest, like his songs would probably be longer if he did have verses and choruses. But he's not thinking about this ever being on the radio. Do you know what I mean? And so he just, spits for 2.5 minutes, and then that's it. maybe a little movie clip or something, and that's about it. Yeah.
The Gorillaz song is probably the most pop song he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like hearing that Gorillaz song, and then also, just trying to just kind of looking him up after that and going like, okay, this is interesting. Like, who is this guy? And kind of going from there. Also, like, this is totally random, but like, there's a record store in my town that has a bunch of murals on the outside, and one of them is the cover from Food. And so, like, in the area where I live, like driving past this thing every day and like seeing like this mural of this guy and thinking like, all right, so I guess that's MF Doom. Like, I've heard him on this Gorillaz thing. I gotta like maybe find out a little more about him, and just kind of starting at the top and getting into it from there.
Yeah, it's like because I mean, you went through all the albums and stuff, and it's like it is a strange thing to maybe want to get into for the first time. I can only imagine. I think I didn't really have that because I just like over the years it was more like picking up, because like I feel like everyone I knew sort of like had their thing they like for sure. Mad Villain was like the big one, so like I knew a handful of people. It wasn't even like it wasn't, I didn't even have to really like seek it out. It would just be like I'd be on like tour with my band or whatever, and someone just like puts that one on, it's like okay. And so I had the ones that I really loved as a kid, and then I think through osmosis, every other album I sort of like got into, But it's like a weird thing if you're like, okay, I'm gonna listen to his first album, and then his second album. It's like that's not the way to do it, I guess. Or like, it's not. You can't go MF Doom album 1, MF Doom album 2. It's like collaboration. Or like another name or something like that, Not, I guess now it's not a problem with like the internet or whatever.
Yeah, Spotify like changed all that for everybody, I suppose.
Yeah, they put it together nicely, like they list Mad Villain as, MF Doom as well. So
yeah, it's crazy that like he only released like a couple albums like as MF Doom. I mean, it's still him, but as far as like his sort of personas go or whatever. And I guess that's like his main one. When he's producing, like he's I'm often credited as Metal Fingers, and then as a rapper he's Metal Face is sort of how that breaks down. But like his different personas are interesting because like MF Doom is kind of like his, I guess, base persona, and then
Yeah.
and then like as the 2000s rolled around, he also produced as or released as MF Doom, but wanted to be or do something different, and made albums as Victor Vaughn. And like Victor Vaughn is like, I think he described Victor Vaughn as kind of like a 14-year-old MF Doom fan. If a young kid like killed him and like took his mask and like was like doing him. And those albums are like, I guess I would, this adjective doesn't mean anything anymore, but I guess I'd describe them as like grittier, for whatever that's worth.
Okay.
And like,
yeah.
both in terms like sonically, sort of like a darker kind of take, but also what he raps about is like he's not necessarily crossing over into like shoot 'em up gangster rap, but it's like a little more violent, a little more dark in terms of like the themes and things that he's exploring.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like, yeah, it's not a food album or whatever.
Yeah, it's not food. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked the Victor Vaughn stuff a lot more than I thought that I was going to. I would put some of those up with his best stuff.
I did give both of them a listen, but I listened to almost his whole catalog for this, and so they definitely like trying to like that stuck with me a little bit less. But I also only like listened to those two once, and then like Mad Villainy, I was like, okay, yeah, I remember this one. I really like it, so I listened to that a lot. So those ones. I agree with your take on them, but I don't have like a standout song that I specifically remember,
Speaking of specific songs and stuff like that, do you want to talk about some of your like favorite album or favorite track or something that stood out for you?
Well, outside of the ones I already really like, because that was also I really like well, one, I like all his collaborations with Ghostface Killah. As I said, the Mask song was the first one I heard, and I always thought that was cool because the first ever time I ever saw Ghostface Killah, he had like one of those like, clear or pantyhose things on his head.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is pretty fitting. But then like I liked a lot when I was in high school. They had another one that was on like the DS GTA game. That was pretty sick. So those are some of my favorites, but like in terms of new ones, I think like most of both those the collaboration Mad Villainy was like most of the songs on there were pretty awesome, and then the I got really into the Czarface collabs he did.
Oh, okay, yeah. I just listened to those recently. Yeah,
I liked having. I guess because like for one like Inspector Deck was such a familiar kind of style to me, and this is I don't want to go off on like this is a Wu-Tang hour, but Inspector Deck was someone I kind of past like 5 to 10 years I used to like follow like every solo album everyone released, I'd be like, oh, gotta hear it, and then as there like a lot came out that I just wasn't as into, so I kind of stopped paying attention and went on to other things. But Inspector Deck, when I first stopped following that, he was the one where I was like, I didn't really like any of his solo albums, even though he was like one of my favorite guys on the albums.
Yeah.
But then listening to this, I was like, oh, like I think he finally got something that worked for him. I think having this sort of group, because I feel like the big time problem was like maybe there weren't as many good beats, like felt like there were a lot, like there were like RZA beats or whatever, but they felt like maybe like the bottom of the barrel or something. Anyway, though I just really liked hearing like those two together because they both have a similar like they both like the references. I think Doom is more creative with them, I would say, but it was cool like them bouncing off of each other because Inspector Deck's very like he's flowing and it's like it feels very good and it's like in the pocket, and then MF Doom comes in and it's like so awkward and like the opposite,
Yeah, like I love a lot of the sort of like solo projects from Wu-Tang. I mean, they can't all be like only for Cuban Links, I guess, but
Yeah.
Just having them around and like doing stuff. It's like that. It's like a restaurant where it's like there's a couple dishes that like are your favorite thing, but like even the rest of the stuff is like pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, okay, this is not what I normally get, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, right, yeah. I'm trying to think of like what stands out for me, and it's sort of weird to say even after saying that I like, you know, the whole discography, but I think like Operation Doomsday really does it for me. Like his debut album, like as far as debut albums go, it's got to be like one of the best debut albums for a rapper like ever. And especially like the first track on the album, you know, Doomsday, which is just so, you know, you're thinking like it's 1999. He's doing like something that like few others have done, and he's doing it in such a way. And if you listen to like to the lyrics of Doomsday and like what it's about, like it's just his whole aesthetic. It sets up who he is. It sets up. It's got a chorus, and it's even got a hook, you know, that a girl sings. But it's like it sets up his whole thing, and about like losing his brother. And it's weird because it's not. I don't want to say it's like a, you know, I Buried Paul thing, but Doom often raps about like his legacy and like, you know, him dying and stuff like that. And of course, it's just weird to hear now, like with, you know, what really happened. But having him rap about, you know, what his tomb will say, you know, whether it'll say Doom, you know, or say his real name, and that's sort of like up to whoever, but he's going to keep doing his thing. That just really like sticks with me. And then like, I don't know, like I'm not very creative, but I like all the stuff everybody likes, you know. rap Snitch Knishes is really great.
I do like looking at, if you look at like the top Spotify songs of him or whatever, I'm like, oh, most of these are like songs I really like, but
they all deserve to be there.
But yeah, they don't happen to be. Maybe it is just because the other ones hit a very specific thing for me that I like, you know, it's like, it's got that stuff that's good in those songs, but it's also got like some of my favorite guys or like cool like specific beats. I don't know.
It's, you know, like Rap Snitch Knishes, you know, speaking of mysteries, you know, it has a guest by Mr. Fantastic, who, you know, this big mystery, who's Mr. Fantastic? Like he's only on like 2 songs that Doom does, and nobody knows who this guy is. And I'll tell you, like, I went down the rabbit hole of like forums and Doom fans posting and people trying to figure out like who Mr. Fantastic is. And there's a lot of theories, but like nobody really believes any of the theories. Every time somebody puts out a theory and they go, no, listen, it must be Grimm because he raps on this other thing. It sounds kind of, maybe they're pitching down a little bit, and nobody really like has anything good to say about any of the theories. Like it's a total mystery who this guy is. And it's too bad because they're clearly having like a ton of fun, like working on the song together. And the guy's a pretty good rapper. And so I just, like, I don't know what the circumstances are that like, this guy just isn't a rapper, or he is somebody, but he was hiding his identity, and they never really did anything together again. Like MF Doom, Mr. Fantastic collab album is like another thing that we really need. Hopefully, that's floating around somewhere.
That's kind of great. It's like, it's not only is he mysterious, but then there's like more mysterious guys he's brought along. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I love like. It also just like there's a lot of guest spots on a lot of his albums that are like people I've never heard of before, and I always like that a lot.
Yeah,
there's obviously like your big guests and stuff too, like you mentioned Talib Kweli or whatever. But then there's like some more underground guys. You like that. That's what I always loved about that type of thing. Same thing with like Wu-Tang. It's like, if you really want to dive deep, you start like you just get to learn about a bunch of guys.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And like their voice, I love like their voices are all distinct and they jump out to you. And like certain ones will be like, oh, who's this guy? And like so that verse on Rap Snitch Knishes or whatever does have that quality where he's like this guy's voice is like wild.
Yeah. And of course, there's the MF Doom meme where MF Doom, where he just says MF Doom, and then MF Doom. People put that into like SpongeBob videos or something like that.
I've not seen that.
Oh, you haven't heard that? It would be like somebody will call the Krusty Krab, and they'll go,
"Is this the Krusty Krab?"
No, this is MF Doom. Is this the Krusty Krab?
No, this is MF Doom.
No, I don't know that meme.
Yeah. I don't. I'm too old to understand memes, but it's fun though.
MF Doom.
Well, we better start talking about some of his Star Trek references, or we're never going to get through this.
There are Star Trek references.
Oh my God, there's so many Star Trek references.
Before I say we even mention him, the thing I like about him is that it's not just like he does reference the stuff people know, but it's not just like beam me up, Scotty. You know, it's like it's ones that are meant to like if you are like really into it, you're like, oh, it's like a Voyager reference. Like that's great.
Yeah, just like in the same way that he sort of sets up a scenario and then it pays it off with, you know, like a reference or something like that, or comparing it to a character. Like, yeah, one of those characters will just be Uhura or something like that. You're just supposed to know what that is. Yeah,
it works. And like, I like to like, well, because there's a lot of references he makes and I don't know all of them, you know, so, but yeah. I do like how sometimes it's like just something that passes you by. It's I said catchphrase earlier, but I mean like a punchline, but then other times it's like the song just kind of like turns and it's like still about whatever it's about, but now we're talking about like, you know, like the Klingons are here and like Cardassians or something, and it like is like a mini verse within the verse about Star Trek essentially.
He was definitely, I mean, in addition to being a Godzilla fan and a Marvel Comics fan and all these other things, he was absolutely a Star Trek fan. Writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, in talking about him, pointed out that that's his particular style. He said other MCs are obsessed with machismo, but Dumoulin is obsessed with Star Trek, and I think that that is a fitting description of him. And there's a bunch of like Star Trek references, as we talked about in his raps. So much so that Reddit user RockLobster18 compiled a list and a Spotify playlist, which I guess I could probably link in the show notes to this, where you can hear all of his songs that have Star Trek references. That's kind of what I'm working off for this show here.
I think there's more too. Like, I think there's like certain times where it'll be like where I caught like one, like 2 words or like a sound effect or something. You know what I mean? Or like a clip from something that's like thrown in there. I could be wrong, but I feel like that happened a few times where I'm like, was that on the list? Or what was it? And then I like it passed me by, you know. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't want to make the list longer.
Yeah. But yeah, don't be surprised to hear something like that in Doom's songs. In no real particular order, we can talk about some of the references that he has, and also just references to other stuff. On his Victor Vaughn album, in the song "The Drop," he says,
"Make a hick say, what the hey, quote that shit from sick bay. Ensign, he should have asked his upperclassmen before he bust blast and never trust no Cardassians. Captain Dog supplemental, the Klingons are now aboard the Enterprise rental vessel. On my cue, photon torpedo."
That's one of the ones I mean, where it's like, you think it's just going to be like one little reference and
pinch on the neck from Mr. Spock or something like that.
Yeah. And then it's like, actually, now we've taken, it's that meme of like the car going on the off ramp or whatever. It's like, no, this is like, it is now a Star Trek song. And then it goes away from it, you know?
Yeah.
You never get too comfortable, I guess, you know?
The whole thing is like a little Star Trek skit. And then also like, you know, throwing things in like the Enterprise rental vessel, like a double meaning, like it's an Enterprise car or something like that.
Yeah. That's how it kind of fits into like whatever you're talking about before, is that it, you know, it kind of usually will have a double meaning or something.
Yeah, right. Which is, you know, all part of the wordplay that he brings to stuff. In his song Phasers, which is the last track on his Take Me to Your Leader album, really it's just phasers is sort of the reference. And at the end of the song, they say,
"Nowadays it's amazing raising young. Rule number 1, keep your phasers on stun."
Yeah, see, that's the closest one that's like I could see just like I could see like Jay-Z saying that or something, you know?
Right, yeah.
But I mean, still, that's a cool song. That was a really cool song.
It rhymes with stun. Oh yeah, phasers around stun. Yeah, that whole album is great because he's a big part of it, but also, you know, the entire sort of collective is all doing things on it. And so you're exposed to like a lot of other rappers, and the whole, it seems like it would overwhelm the whole production, like having everybody be a monster and then rapping about monster stuff and then having the monster samples and everything. But I just think that it works. And if you know him from, like I said, like for Operation Doomsday, which is original, but does sort of fit into, I think, late 90s hip hop, and then switching over to this, suddenly this crazy other thing where he's doing all these other stuff. Like it's a rough transition, but it's just so enjoyable.
And like you said, like with his first like solo album, it already feels very much like this is, like, to me, it feels like it's a very complete idea of who he is, you know what I mean? Like, establishes every aspect of him so well, like you said, and then now the next thing is like so weird. It's like, and it's like, I don't know, like you're a big monster rapping or something, like, is the idea.
Right.
I loved
it. With three heads. I mean, he picks the 3-headed monster. He's a guy who has different personas.
Right. Yeah. It's like it's interesting to go to that, like, almost right away. But, like, it's almost like not... It's, like, mysterious, but not, you know what I mean? It's kind of like how everyone knows, like, or knew, like, oh, yeah, Mankind, that's Mick Foley or whatever, and he was Cactus Jack. And, like, they play into it a little bit, though, too, you know? It's, like, both mysterious, who is this guy, but also, like, we know this isn't the guy.
Yeah, I always wonder... So he grew up in, like, New York, right? So I always wonder when I've talked to just people from different like areas and states and regions, you know, like on Enterprising Individuals, and they talk about watching Star Trek reruns, like when they were growing up, like, you know, what like channel it was, you know, if it was, I already forgot what it was, but there's some channel in New York that pretty much all Star Trek fans from New York were watching, you know, like late night reruns and syndicated, you know, broadcasts of old Star Trek episodes.
Yeah, I'd love to imagine him watching that. That sounds great.
So it must have been that, and of course, there's a lot of you know, like comic shops and things like that in New York, where he probably grew up getting comic books and watching cartoons.
Oh yeah, it's really cool. Like, it feels very, I don't know, too. Like, there is all that sort of referential stuff, and it often feels like this is like cool to reference, like, so, or it's like very a popular thing that I'm referencing, you know, so it's cool. But this, like, you know, we get deeper into like these different monster movies and stuff like that, and it feels so like authentic, you know, kind of raw. It's cool. Yeah,
you get the idea that he's not doing it for points or for people to, you know, to pop to like his references. Like, he would be talking about this whether anybody was listening or not. Mm-hmm. It's also crazy that, you know, he worked with so many people. Like you were talking about Ghostface, like they were supposedly working on a collaborative album
I know,
in like 2015, and it never saw the light of day. So maybe it exists still. We don't really know.
I really hope that happens. Because
but I mean, like, things still come out. So like that Czarface thing came out last year.
Yeah, true. That would be a great gift for me.
Okay, people take note. So some of his references are kind of shorter ones like that. Like in Gazillionaire, he talks about...
He's like Worf. Some say stronger, though.
I doubt it. I doubt anybody could be stronger than Worf.
No, come on.
In that same song, he references Jake the Snake, too. He talks about Jake the Snake and DDTs.
In any event, it's fake like wrestling. Get him like Jake the Snake on mescalines.
I've caught a lot of wrestling references, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of wrestling references.
Not surprising. Also,
on a bonus track on Doomsday, he talks about
a villain in your land, in his land a ruler, hard hitting like Huffin' the Ruler with Lieutenant Uhura. Every day feel like it's an off day with Ferris Bueller.
I actually don't even remember that one. That's a pretty good one.
And on his first Victor Vaughn album, he's got an extended part where it's like, this is one of those things where you really do have to be a Trek fan to get it. but he says,
Next experiment, 12 strands from double helix. No, I haven't seen Kess, Neelix. Oh yeah? Just you stay away from her with those lyrics. Please. Ain't nobody fucking after her. I'm out of here as soon as I fix the flux capacitor.
so he rhymes lyrics with helix and neelix, and he's also referencing the very weird and unenjoyable plot line where Neelix is mad at Tom Paris for hanging out with Cass all the time.
Yes, and he brought in Neelix in character. Like, he responded the way Neelix would have responded to him.
Yeah, which is crazy. Also in that song, he makes reference to the flux capacitor and going back in time.
Sure, yeah. Also fitting, very fitting.
Back to the Future in there. There's a crazy one on Figaro, one of his best-known songs off of Mad Villain, where he's got a long run that ends, or at least includes, a Starfleet thing, but it goes...
Who shot you? Who got you? New spots to vandal. Do not stand still. Both show skills close, but no krills. Toast for polils. Post no bills. Coast to coast. Joe Smoes flows ill. Go chill. Not supposed to overdose. No dose pills. Off pride tykes. Talk wide. You scar me. Off sides. Like how Worf ride with Starfleet.
That's an insane amount of like raps and internal rhymes.
Yeah,
but it's also a reference to Subterranean Homesick Blues by Bob Dylan, right?
Yes,
all the, Post No Bills and No Dose Pills.
That's a great one too, because like you get, it's like, I don't know, you don't get that reference really. Unless you know.
you have to understand. Yeah, who Worf is. On Microwave Mayo from Born Like This, he says,
His own way was strange, but it matters not. Tuned into a frequency tone that shattered rock. Hold it down like Shatner do Spock. Rapper jocks need to put a sock in a chatterbox.
Wow, I missed that one too. I think I listened to all these songs, and like some of them just boom. It's just like went right by.
It just goes right by. I also like that. One. The song's called Microwave Mayo, and he's got a line that says...
Depends on the shades, the end of days fades. Pretenders late in days on stages. Do melees, eat it up, microphone, microwave, mayonnaise.
Do malaise, which I thought was really great.
Wow.
Like mayonnaise, yeah.
And it's kind of his name.
Yeah. Off of Rhymes Like Dimes, another one of his best-known songs off of Doomsday. The entire chorus is...
Electromagnetic field will block all logic, Spock and G-Shock, a biological clock.
Which is another one of those things where it's completely falling off of the rhythm, but somehow he keeps like the train on the tracks every time.
Yeah, I would wonder what that looks like in your head, when you're doing it. Like, is it like...
I don't know.
Because some people, it's like, you can like kind of map it out. And other people, it's like, I just know I gotta say it all before then, and like maybe you just get it all in, and then you get very comfortable doing that,
As a musician, like I'm good with rhythm, I'm good with syncopation, but it's the sort of like falling off rhythm stuff that really throws me sometimes. Like I'm the kind of person that can like listen to a song and be kind of singing it to himself, and then go in the next room and do something else and come back and be right on to where the song was. Like I'm a real George Michael of rhythm, if you will. George Michael from Arrested Development. But like when like jazz, like bebop jazz really throws me sometimes, or like when rappers are doing that thing where they sort of go off the beat but like come back in. It's like, geez, how do you do that?
And I think all those you talked about all those like internal rhymes or whatever that he can like cram in there too, that sort of thing. I think like a lot of there's like the whole like lyrical miracle like that people make fun of some rapper like Eminem, type stuff where like it's like a lot of these words they just sound cool and you're just saying them, but like a lot of times like what he's saying, it's usually like a cool reference to something, or like it makes sense in the context of the song, you know what I mean? It's like certainly sometimes it is just because like these words kind of sound cool next to each other, but I like how it feel like it sounds like it makes sense when he says it. Maybe it's just his delivery. I don't know.
I guess he just knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And like, again, like you said, like it's hard to know like what's going on in his head, but he's just got a lot to say, and this is the way that it's going to come out. I also like the outro to that song, which is as long as the song itself. where I like a co-producer, Cucumber Slice, is just like sort of like yelling over the over the beat that keeps going.
Now, what are you supposed to say on the end of records? I don't know. Yeah! Woo! Yeah! Mashed potatoes! Applesauce!
He's trying to do an outro, but he's making fun of like hip hop outros and skits because he's just like, how do you I don't know how to end the song. How do I end it? He just kind of keeps like riffing on the beat.
That is a good one. Yeah, you just have to keep naming people. I think that's the
Right,
trick.
just keep naming people. Yeah,
That you know.
Go to www.mfdoom.com. Yeah. On his first Victor Vaughn album, the song "Change the Beat," he says,
First thing they notice when they come to is they bling is gone. Then they start remembering the Klingon with the rings on.
The Klingon almost always sounds good in a song.
"Yeah." He actually worked with another producer called Big Ben Klingon, and he mentions him in his song "Space Hose" off the Danger Doom album.
Later this week, Big Ben Klingon. After him was no one else we could afford to bring on.
Oh, I had no idea who he was talking about. I just was like, oh, they're talking about a literal Klingon named Ben.
We didn't talk about like any of his live albums, but he did a live album that was recorded at a show in New York, and I think it comes with some versions of Food, and it features Big Ben Klingon, and I haven't heard it, but I was looking at Rap Genius, and there's like an entire skit that's like an intermission between the two parts of the show, and apparently, like, I think it's Doom like talking possibly to Klingon, like in Klingon. So there's a whole skit where
shoot,
he's like, what do you want? And the guy's like talking in Klingon. He's like, yeah, I don't speak Klingon. Are you transporting any tribbles? No, I'm not transporting tribbles. I'm a Terran. Are you a Klingon? And they go through this whole little skit.
Whoa. Okay. Wow, we should... Okay, I want to hear that. I had no idea about this.
That's on... The album's called Expectoration. It's a live album.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah, I see it here on the playlist, the very last one.
Expectoration, or spitting, is a common side effect of speaking Klingon. Until you are used to it, keep a napkin or handkerchief nearby.
Off the album Super What, there's a song called So Strange. It says,
Behead the king and caught the wave. Exercise. Naughty ways with the rule on the Enterprise. Who the fool to get the prize? The game is televised. Improvise. Dead testify lies.
They like Uhura.
Yeah, like Uhura, like Worf.
Yeah, like they seem pretty cool.
No talk about Ensign Mayweather, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, it is cool though. Like I guess that like makes it an even cooler reference. Like you're kind of referencing this like important figure in like media or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Never got into Tuvok, I guess, either, which is like Tuvok rhymes with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's another word like Klingon, or it's just I think it's because it's just like very basic syllables or something, but like they just sound good together, you know, like when you're naming a Klingon or Vulcan or whatever, you don't really have to think about like what the like, you know, it's not like naming a human character, you know, like okay, it's got to be like Joe or something.
Right.
Like
yeah
core math or something. That's a horrible name, but you know what I mean. You just like say two words, so
yeah,
those make perfect for rhyming.
Put some errant apostrophes in there. Yeah, and you're
Uhura
good to
is
go.
a little trickier, but like, you know, you can get in there.
You know, I wanted to mention too that he has a song called "Never Dead," I believe, on the first Victor Vaughn album, and in it it's like a bukkake of like pop culture references. He talks about Peter Parker. He's got a line,
flipping like Optimus Prime to a 10-wheeler. V set the scheme on his own team like Starscream. Then go hit the bar scene all like, nah, I mean.
On it, you know, the title of the track is "Never Dead," and he also mentions the line, "The roach was never dead," which is something that he says a lot in his songs, which I think is supposed to both represent the idea that like he's going to keep surviving, he's going to keep doing what he does. You know, the reports of his death have been exaggerated, but also I guess I've heard that like his brothers, one of his nicknames was the Roach, and so like in doing this and having this career and succeeding, like he's keeping like, you know, the memory of like his brother and their love of hip hop alive.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, I think we've proved that this guy was definitely inspired by Star Trek and was continually inspired by Star Trek. I guess I wonder what he would have thought about like some of the new Star Trek, especially having, a black lead in Discovery and the new show and some of the ways that Star Trek itself kind of references and pays homage to earlier Trek.
Just watch one of these posthumous
Of course,
albums.
in the UK, maybe he couldn't see
He
it.
couldn't get it. So many injustices.
Yes.
It would be funny if one of these posthumous album comes out and he's like, I'm hanging out with Saru.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, Burnham is already, Burnham, and then you can do something with
Burnham. That's pretty good.
that. And Michael, yeah.
Tilly. Silly. Pretty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we could do it.
Yeah, I think we could probably do this. End up as Logic 2 and 3.0
Yeah. I have total faith in my abilities.
to at least match Logic. Yeah, go ahead and retire, Logic. We got this. Don't worry.
That'd been great. Like, go see Doom and be like, "What do you think about the new Star Trek?" If only we could have gone to a show, and if COVID hadn't happened, maybe we could have flown over, gone to a show and interviewed him and said, "What do you think about season 2 of Picard?"
His interviews are awesome, and sometimes he was often interviewed by like rap magazines and like underground magazines, and so you always kind of like the quality of the discourse is often dependent on the interviewer, and they're not necessarily like New York Times level interviewers, but in any case he would just always be himself, and he would be often doing other things. So he'd be like shopping or eating or something like that, and just sort of like, yeah, do this, do that. He was answering, somebody asked him about like, I think it was like Mr. Fantastic or Rhymes Like Dimes, like one of his big songs. And he was just kind of saying something about, I was working on this thing, and he was telling this like really interesting story. And he's like, hold on, I'm crossing the street here. He almost gets hit by a car. And then comes back and is just talking about something different. You're like, no, go back to the thing you were talking about.
Oh yeah. Well, I like how authentic it always seems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just talking about whatever he feels like, similar to his raps.
Ironically, for all the artifice, he was an extremely authentic guy, I think.
Yeah, and like even, I don't know, I think he made, you mentioned it, but like an authentic corporate rap album.
Oh yeah.
So if that's a testament to all of it, is that he made a rap album for a major television station, and like it still is like so sick. Like, it's not even like, it's like maybe I could see some people like, oh, skits or whatever, but otherwise it's like, dang, if you can do that,
And to be fair to Adult Swim, I mean, I think they often are happy to let like the people they want to work with sort of do what they want. So it's not like
that's something I appreciate about them, for sure.
I don't think they gave him a list where it's like, you got to mention Harvey Birdman, Frylock, and C-Lab in your raps. But he did it anyway. Like, he did an album that's totally him, but also is now just adding this new sort of raft of references. And presumably he also enjoyed those shows. Like, it's really weird. In 2006, Adult Swim did this thing called Christmas with Doom, where for like one night, like Doom was in a studio with like a Christmas sweater on and like a glass of eggnog, and he was doing like the transitions in between shows. Like, he was introducing shows. And,
oh my gosh, I
talking about stuff.
Vaguely remember this, yeah.
So like he was totally down to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and he was like, even on that album, it's like I don't know, I guess maybe at the time they were probably promoting it, but it's funny hearing like, Super Hair Forever or whatever, like one that I feel like even at the time wasn't like, this is one of our big shows,
Yeah.
So presumably he watched it. Well, actually he had to have watched it, because for example, his Aqua Teen Hunger Force song he does is like, it's so funny because it's so much more accurate than the actual theme song to the show. Where it's like, I think they did not tell, Schoolboy Q or whatever, like what the show. I think they just told him the character names, whereas like clearly the Doom song, he gets into so much detail and like it describes them so well.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, they should make this the theme.
He also, this is a funny story I heard about him where Stone's Throw, the label that released Mad Villainy, one of the guys who's like a manager for it, a guy named Egon, asked Doom to officiate his wedding. And
oh my God.
Like Doom agreed, and then he like showed up at Egon's house at 3 a.m, like the day before the wedding, like in a suit. And then, so first of all, Egon's like, all right, I guess that's fine. And then was like taking him around at the rehearsal and everything and like telling him, so we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And Doom was like, had the mask on, but was like, had a notebook and he was like taking notes and he was like being very attentive and everything.
Wow.
And apparently like the whole event went great and he was, he married them and everything went off well and everybody had a lot of fun. And later on, like Egon got a chance to look in the notebook and there was just like a bunch of random shapes and drawings. Like Doom was not actually taking notes. He was just like pretending to take notes the entire time.
That's awesome.
So yeah, just like the sort of prankster nature was just baked into everything that he did, which I think is really great.
That's another thing too, where it's like, who did he do this joke for?
Yeah,
or
right.
Was he joking?
I know.
Or was he like just I don't care, or you know what I mean?
Like a lot of the stuff that he did, it was probably just for himself. So. So I mentioned before Rock Lobster 18. You can find his Spotify playlist, probably if you just search for it, but I'll slip something into the show notes. Also, there is a YouTube channel that was very helpful in putting a lot of the research for this together. The channel is called An Absurd Experience. It isn't exclusively Doom stuff, but the guy has a lot of videos about Doom, like the Doom iceberg and going into a lot of Doom's work, his collaborations with other people. I think, like I said, it's not supposed to be a Doom channel, but I think the guy got a lot of views off of Doom stuff, so he's doing a lot of Doom stuff. And he also, like, if you're interested in possible unfinished albums or possible projects that we could see in the future, he does speculative videos about that as well. He kind of called the second Czarface album. And so, if you want updates on Doom stuff, An Absurd Experience is probably a good place to look.
Oh, okay, awesome.
So I think that pretty much wraps it up for our second look at a musical artist. We'll have to do one again next year. This is fun.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly more Star Trek musical references to be made.
Yeah, we can definitely find other artists who
the Hanukkah
draw from
song?
Star Trek. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. We'd have to dive deeply into the oeuvre of Adam Sandler, but I'm sure there's other stuff there.
Sure. Yeah, we'll just assume and then go for it.
Yeah. And maybe we'll luck out, or we can just talk about the Water Boy or something like that.
Yeah. How is that similar to Enemy or Measure of a Man or something?
It does. Well, it does have. It does have Fonzie in it, and so maybe there's some connection between Fonzie and Happy Days to Star Trek there somehow. Henry Winkler was never on Star Trek. Of course, he was on Happy Days for so long. But, I'm surprised he never did an 80s or 90s Star Trek.
Howard, Clint Howard.
Ron Howard and Clint Howard. Yeah, how was Ron Howard never on a Star Trek?
Yeah, true. Well, one, he doesn't look as messed up and weird.
That's true. Yeah.
That's what got Clint Howard in the door.
Ron Howard produced Felicity, right? So there's a Ron Howard, J.J. Abrams connection. They definitely know each other.
Well, there's still time. I guess they could, they could do the thing. They could, I don't know, go solo with him.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Kick off whoever is working on this new movie for the
we'll
millionth time.
We'll never see Solo 2, I don't think. But
no.
Maybe JJ, now that he's not. You think he ever gets a piece of any Star Wars, just because he's not doing movies anymore, like can he be an executive producer or something like that? Maybe he and Ron Howard can use their combined powers to bring the Solo franchise back from the dead and make it a success.
No, we want them to make another Star Trek movie, and now we're like, well, if they bring Solo back, maybe they can put Tom Cruise in that. Maybe Tom Cruise.
I actually I don't care if they make us. I just want a Star Trek 4. I don't care if they do it, but it looks like at least JJ will be doing it. But
they both know Tom Cruise.
That's true. They both do.
Man.
Yeah.
We go to Tom Cruise's house.
The far and away connection.
Look, Tom, Ron, and JJ both said they do it if you're in.
Yes.
Like we got their approval, so please.
Only if he comes hat in hand to me. Yeah, I don't. We bringing it full circle. Like Solo is another one of those where it's like, I don't care. I don't think this movie should exist. But I turned my brain off and I actually enjoyed it. And now they won't make another one. So.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like, oh, it's probably bad. I don't know. I don't care. I had no hopes.
Actually, yeah, it was all right.
It's anyway, probably bad. I don't know.
That's the wrong Star franchise. Let's tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtrekking.
Yes. So, we're getting into some current stuff, which is exciting. Our first Strange New Worlds connection. A lot of people have drawn this comparison, and I have no idea the specifics. So I'm excited to read The Ones Who Walk Away from Amalus by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Yeah.
I've never read this, so I don't know. I'm pretty interested. Like a lot of people seem to praise it, I guess. And there was, I guess, a very stark or like very easy comparison to draw with the Strange New Worlds episode Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach.
Yeah, I think a lot of people pretty bullish on Strange New World season 1, and I think there are a lot of episodes that seem to draw from or take inspiration from other things. In some cases, classic sci-fi tales, and in some cases, movies. It's really just like somebody made a season of TV for our show. And so we have to, of course, dig into that as soon as we can. And a great place to start seemed to be this short story by Ursula K. Le Guin that inspired a pretty dark episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
I've heard good things said about it. I mean, I even heard people favorably compare it to the story. And I like the episode all right. So I think this is going to be a pretty fun experience. And yeah, the Strange New Worlds, I'm glad I feel like we're more able to draw stuff from this season because of the episodic nature. There's I think 3 episodes that were like, oh, there's very clear, obvious thing we can do here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be doing that on our next show, but that's it for this week's Backtrekking. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you like the show, tell a friend. You can follow us at Backtrekking on Twitter, and tell us, too, what you think that we should look at in future episodes. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me, I'm on Twitter, I'm at GooeyFame.
And I'm at K1IBAN on Twitter. And you can find all the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that's it for us. We'll see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.